I'd love to hear if you could maybe walk us through the broad strokes of how LTK's PM interview process works from all the way from application reviews to offer stage.
Absolutely. So the first thing is, I mean, it's going to be pretty common across, I think a lot of startups. There's going to be an application, a referral. So that's where it starts. Then you have a call with a recruiter that's going to screen you. I have actually prepared a few questions and align with that recruiter on what I'm looking for that specific role. And then if that goes well, there would be a hiring manager call. I take most of those, but sometimes my peer, another director, would actually cover for me. If that goes well, we'll have a full loop. One thing I would say is I have added, because of the shift right now with AI tools, a new format that I want to talk about, which is you have to talk about a feature that you would like, but also maybe improve it with an AI tool and explain the why and what data and hypothesis. So it's a little bit of a case study, but really open-ended and see what you can do. And then after that, obviously a full panel of interviews looking for different signals depending on the role and the level. And then if that goes well, we'll wrap up with a couple of leadership calls. And if that goes well, we'll extend an offer.
Great. And do you have is there a general time that LTK aims to kind of walk people through that process on the happy path?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I would say is I try to group all my interviews or the people that we are sourcing around the same time because you don't want to you don't want to leave a candidate hanging for too long of like, hey, wait, we have to wait 3 weeks, right? And another thing I would say as well is the make sure that the people who apply actually have the right role requirements, I would say, that you meet the role. So that would expedite, I think, the process as well of creating that first interview, I would say, flow. So that is one thing that I'm looking for as well, making sure that we have the right candidates all grouped together, I would say around the same time period.
Awesome. Before we go to the next panelist, because we'll dive into each of those stages as we get into the next round of questions. But one thing I'll call out for people in the audience is that this is definitely a pattern I'm seeing where companies are choosing to create these batches of candidates that they want to put through the process. So understanding that it's not on this ongoing continuous basis, I think is very helpful from a candidate experience and expectations perspective. Um, cool. I think who went in the middle last time, was it Stephanie? Yeah, would love to hear more about Stripe.
Yeah, absolutely. So similar to a lot of what Chantal said, and honestly, like Amazon and United States Digital Service and Stripe, they're all so roughly similar in terms of process. Um, but first we start with a business case for like why we need this role. So that really anchors everything. Like, what's the problem this PM will solve, and what's the impact we expect from hiring them. Once that's approved, I build out the job description, we get that posted, and then I do a warm handoff with recruiting in terms of I get assigned a recruiter, which is always important. And then I sit with them and I highlight like specifically for this role, this is the shape of PM that we need, and these are the signals that I'd love for you to screen resumes and during your conversations to keep these in mind and really evaluate folks on. Um, and then generally the recruiter will screen resumes for basics like years of experience, location, any red flags, like a bunch of short stints, stuff like that. And then I get a short list of resumes and I review primarily for accomplishment fit. So how the resume might fit the job description that I put out there that I'm looking for. Basically, do I believe that this person could drive the kind of outcomes that we care about? And by the way, I need to do this really quickly because it's like a lot of resumes. So the more, if you've ever heard of like the 3-second test, like for your product, like try that for your resume, like have, anyone read it for like, I don't know, 5 seconds and say, or 10 seconds maybe, and say like, okay, what do I sound like as a person? Like, what are your takeaways? So you want it to be really readable. And then, yeah, from there, we then move to the loop. One interesting thing actually about Stripe that they recently changed was it used to be just the full loop. So like product sense, execution, the technical, like everything together. But they realized that a lot of candidates would like do well on most of the interviews, but then fail out on the product sense topic. So what they did was they actually pulled that forward. So now it goes like recruiter screen, then hiring manager call and product sense. And if you pass that, then you go to the full loop, which I think was a really clever optimization. And then from there, it's the offer debrief. They call it a trope. Actually, I forget what they called it at Amazon, but they had another clever name for it. And yeah, I stay involved throughout the process. So
Thank
I'll
you,
jump.
Stephanie.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll
go
jump
ahead,
in
Nikki.
because Duolingo sounds very similar to that actually. So we have it's effectively 4 rounds. The first is resume screen. I actually am the person that's reviewing resumes. People always are like, "There's a bot that does it." It's actually me. I spend probably 30 seconds on a resume, maybe no more, because we will get thousands of resumes per open role. And so going back to Stephanie's point earlier about just like really trying to get a couple of punch points on there that you are making stand out, because people for sure are not reading every word on your resume. And then it'll go through, our recruiter will take the first call and ask a series of questions. If you make it to the next round, you will land in my inbox. So it's called our hiring manager screen. I will also ask some questions. And then we did something similar with our product sense interview. We now have a product presentation, which is the next round. And so what that looks like is we basically have you design a feature that moves a metric. And we give you a structured prompt that everybody does the same exact thing. The only change with that is we are now basically encouraging people. We used to just have them create some high-level designs. We're now encouraging folks to create a prototype because AI prototyping tools are so good. And so you can actually make it interactive. And it's actually, I think it's easier than it was like 6 months ago, which is pretty cool. And so that's the presentation round. And then we will bring people on what we call our on-site. It's actually on Zoom. I don't know why we call it that. But that is 4 more interviews that will kind of hit at analytics. There's a product strategy case. If you're going to be a people manager, there's a people manager interview. And I'm forgetting one. There's one more in there that I'm going to totally blank on. I'll put it in the chat when it comes to me. And that's the final round. And then if you make it through those rounds, then you basically go to a hiring manager or a hiring review meeting where everyone is basically talking about if we should bring you on board. And so all in all, I'd like to say that there's a happy path in terms of timeline. It totally depends on the candidate. We often let candidate leads lead in terms of their own schedules because people are busy and it's hard to schedule like 10 interviews. But that's high level for Duolingo.